If you grew up on the internet in the early 2000s, chances are at least one of these videos completely messed you up as a kid. And years later, you probably still remember exactly how it felt. For previous generations, monsters hid under the bed. But for the first generation raised online, the monsters lived behind the screen. This was the web before safety filters, before moderation, before anyone understood what unlimited access was doing to children's minds. Before algorithms cleaned things up, millions of kids accidentally stumbled into parts of the web no child was supposed to see. It started with visual deception. In 1999, a flash animation called Happy Tree Friends appeared. With its colorful forest animals and bright style, it looked like a harmless cartoon. But the cute design was exactly what made it work. Each fast-paced episode began with ordinary, cheerful situations. Then, a small mistake would trigger an exaggerated chain reaction, resulting in extreme, over-the-top violence. Because of the sharp contrast, first-time viewers were caught entirely off guard. You never knew how bad it was about to get. And somehow, that made it impossible to stop watching. For many young kids, it wasn't just shocking. It felt like the internet had lied to you. While Happy Tree Friends relied on sudden shock, other animations relied on a slow, lingering rot.
In 2004, if you clicked on a random flash animation on Newgrounds, you expected a crude, loud internet cartoon. Instead, you were greeted by a desolate, green wasteland. This was Salad Fingers, a hunchbacked mutant who obsessed over the cold, rough texture of rusty spoons rubbing against his skin. There were no jump scares, no sudden screams. Instead, his voice sounded distant, scratchy, and physically uncomfortable to listen to. The animation was agonizingly slow, like watching something decay in real time. To this day, nobody really knows if it was a surreal artistic statement or a broadcast from a deeply shattered mind. It wasn't scary, it was just wrong. While web cartoons caused a creeping, passive unease, other digital traps demanded your active participation. It was usually a quiet afternoon. The house was empty. A friend sent you a link to a simple browser game, the Scary Maze game. The premise was innocent. Just guide a tiny blue dot through a narrow blue corridor. It demanded physical closeness. Children would lean in, their faces hovering just inches from the glowing glass of the monitor, squinting, holding their breath to navigate the incredibly thin final level. The game understood exactly how human attention worked. It forced you into a state of absolute, hyper-focused vulnerability. For an entire generation, that maze created a lingering paranoia. It taught them the harshest lesson of the early web: never fully trust a quiet screen. But visual shock is temporary. What happens when the terror is auditory? You've just spent hours in the bright, colorful world of Pokemon Red and Blue. But then, you walk into Lavender Town, a digital graveyard. The music suddenly shifts into a jarring, off-key chiptune that felt like it was drilling into your temples. That eerie contrast birthed the Lavender Town Syndrome, a massive urban legend claiming the original Japanese high-frequency tones caused physical illness in children. The story was fake, but the anxiety it caused was absolutely real. As gaming culture evolved, the fears grew darker. What if the code itself was malevolent? In 2010, the internet was paralyzed by the story of a haunted, second-hand Nintendo 64 cartridge, The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask. The save file was simply named Ben. When played, the code didn't just crash. It felt like it was rotting from the inside. The cheerful town music twisted into a sickening, reversed loop. But the true terror was the statue. A hollow, unblinking shell. It didn't walk. It simply teleported directly behind the player whenever the camera turned. Staring. Waiting. Accompanied by heavily glitched video footage, the lines between a corrupted save file and a digital haunting blurred entirely. It convinced millions of kids that entities could hide inside the plastic shells of their favorite games. By the late 2000s, the YouTube sidebar was a digital Wild West. A child clicking through cartoons could easily stumble into the legend of username 666. The myth was simple. Refresh a suspended channel exactly 666 times, and the familiar white interface would violently decay into a blood-red mess, trapping you in a loop of grotesque, surreal videos. It tapped into a very real dread that the web was a living, breathing entity with corners that could not be controlled. And soon, that entity moved from the desktop to the palm of your hand. With the Talking Angela app, the rumor mill caused mass panic. Children were told that if they stared closely into the animated cat's eyes, they could see the dark reflection of a stranger watching them from inside a room. Kids began covering their front cameras with tape. The terror wasn't on the screen anymore. It was looking back at you. But the internet's most effective trap didn't look dangerous at all. At first glance, Don't Hug Me. I'm Scared was a colorful live-action puppet show, a digital Sesame Street. Because of its innocent exterior, the early algorithm aggressively fed it to millions of children. But halfway through, the cheerful felt puppet aesthetic abruptly collapses, devolving into flashes of raw meat, human organs, and pure psychological dread. To the kids who accidentally clicked on it, it was pure nightmare fuel. For the first generation raised online, the monsters were never hiding under the bed. They were already waiting, behind the glass. None of it was real. But when you were a kid, staring at that glowing monitor alone at 2 a.m., it felt real.